What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Lexi. I will put my Instagram up above. But today I'm going to be doing a full 2023 prep recap for you all. So for those of you who are new here, I am a bikini competitor. I just ended my 2023 bikini prep as of last month. I was prepping from December 2022 to August of 2023 with a couple of minor bumps in the road. As those of you guys know who have watched me for a while, you know that this prep was, threw a couple curveballs my way, but basically I wanted to make this video more so of a recap in a sense of kind of talking about the strategy that my coach and I had as far as getting me stage lean, what we did with food, what we did with cardio, what we did with training, how we managed recovery, and all of those little things leading up to, getting stage lean. So I will put my prep transformation up above. So that is from December 2022 to August 2023, and that's a total of over 20 pounds lost, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I look at the pictures and I don't feel like I would ever guess 20 pounds in between, but that's what it took. But I think it'll be cool to recap a lot of things in this prep because, again, I do get a lot of questions. And this is also a very similar strategy that I implement for my own athletes and clients because I am a coach myself. I always have my coaching application link in the description box below, little shameless plug there. But I think this will be a really cool, insightful, entertaining video because this definitely was the most challenging prep I have gone through as an athlete. One thing as a competitor is, and a lot of you guys who have competed before can probably attest to this, every prep is different. You can't go into every prep thinking it's going to be the same as it was last time because this prep, let me tell you, was drastically different than my 2021 prep. A, it was a lot longer. B, it was, a lot longer because it took me a lot longer to get stage lean. I had a lot more weight to drop. B, I had to get a lot lower with my a lot lower with my food and a lot higher with my cardio. So without further ado, I'm going to basically recap the full season for you guys. And we'll start with kind of where I started in December of 2022 when I kicked off this prep. Okay, so before we get too far into things, I do just want to put a disclaimer out there that I was a little hesitant about putting out this video and just talking about specifics when it comes to how low my food had to get, how high my cardio had to get, because I didn't want anybody to take anything out of context, or I don't want anybody to listen to this and try to do exactly what I did with their own selves, thinking that they're gonna get the same results, because that's not how it works. So a little disclaimer that, just get that out of the way with first. If you choose to implement the strategy that I implemented for prep in the sense of the same numbers and everything, you're not going to get the same results. Highly recommend working with a coach who can learn your body and knows exactly what you need. But I wanted to put that out there, and then I also wanted to put out a disclaimer that this was a contest prep transformation. So this was me getting to a level of leanness that I would never recommend just somebody to get want to get to natural, or want to get to just because for fun. This is not a look that you just want to achieve for fun. This is not a look that you should just want to achieve and look and walk around with. This is a look for a show, and it's a very temporary look, right? So without further ado, so like I mentioned, I started prep in 2022 of December with the intent of actually prepping and being stage lean by the springtime to do spring shows. But that ended up kind of not happening because I ran into a couple of bumps in the road, which I'll touch briefly on. But basically, December 2022, I started my prep. I had taken over a whole year away from stage, and my macros actually got up to, my carbs got up to 300 grams of carbs, which is the highest they have ever gotten, right? And so ideally you would think, okay, well, your food was as high as it had ever gotten, your prep's gonna be a lot easier, right? And sometimes it works that way, right? If you're starting your prep from a really high amount of food, sometimes it does work that way where you may not have to get as low in calories. And I think that would have been the case for me if I wouldn't have run into my gut issue, my thyroid issue. But moral of the story is I started my prep at 300 grams of carbs after over a year of just growing and not being in a diet. I also started, I believe my cardio started at 5 sessions of 20 minutes. It wasn't at zero before I started my prep, partly because I enjoy cardio. I like keeping a little bit in, and my coach knows that. I know that the repercussions are, if I start prep with cardio, I'm gonna just have to build on that, and I know that. So that's where I kind of started prep in 2022. I'll also put like my starting prep pictures up here as well, as those will be interesting to see. So I prepped through Christmas. It wasn't a really big deal right off the get-go. I would say, my weight slowly started to drop that first month in December. And then I remember like after I dropped about 3 pounds, my weight kind of just like hit this sticking point, right? But I was traveling for the holidays. I kind of just accredited it to a little bit of like travel stress and all of that. So once I dropped about 3 pounds, like I said, that's kind of where I hit my first sticking point. And then I slowly started to realize around that January, February timeframe that, I was dropping weight really, really slowly, and I just did not feel, something was off, and like I just felt like something was off. So I trusted that gut, and no pun intended. And I ended up when I got my blood work, I ended up working with somebody, and we found out that I had a really bad gut bacteria case going on, and that was causing my thyroid to be extremely downregulated. So that's kind of why I was so like fat loss resistance in the beginning phases. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting. Is and this is part of the reason I was in prep for so long, was when I found that out, I expressed to my coach, I said, hey, I think it would be smart for us to just like maybe maintain right now, put me at my maintenance calories, just while I work through, my gut issues and my thyroid. And he was like, all right, cool. So I remember for a period of time, he put me at like kind of quote unquote, I say maintenance macros, which were around 160 carb, I want to say 50 fat and 135 protein. And that was very manageable for me. Like that was an amount, no, it wasn't super high, but it also wasn't super low. It was very manageable for me. So I want to say we stayed on those macros for about a month while I really worked through some internal things. And that was probably around like the February timeframe, right? So I'll also put like another picture up here of just kind of where I was around that time. Obviously a little bit leaner from where I started in December, but like not significantly leaner, right? So by this time, I also remember, I think I was doing around like 30 or 40 minutes of cardio, I believe, 5 or 6 days a week. So that's kind of where my cardio was at during that time. Again, for me, it was very manageable, and just kind of a good like maintenance point to be at, right? So then by that time, I knew I wanted to put my health first, right? So I had kind of in the back of my mind, kind of, known, like I was kind of thinking, okay, well, my health comes first. I want to make sure my thyroid is in a good spot. I want to make sure I rid this gut bacteria. And if that means my prep has to be longer, or if that even means I can't even prep this year, that's fine. But we were thankfully able to get my thyroid back to a really normal spot, and my gut was healed, and then my body started responding again. So I remember I did hit this point where this was around kind of like that, I think it was like the March timeframe. I hit a specific weight, and it was about, honestly, between December and March, I was probably only down like 6 pounds, right? Like, was it not like, was my body responding? Yes, a little bit between that time, but it was very, very slow. Like 6 pounds in the span of like 3.5 months. That's very, very slow. So I basically I kind of knew at that point. I'm like, all right, my original game plan to compete in the spring, probably not going to happen. So I was just like, you know what, I'm going to drop any type of show date, and like let's just get my body responding, and then when I get closer to being stage lean, we'll make a decision there. So once I kind of got through my whole gut thyroid, issue, and that was honestly like, that took a good month and a half, 2 months, right? Then I would say around like April, my body started to kind of respond again, and it was really flipping exciting. And I had so much gratitude for like my body just responding. It was such an amazing feeling. So talked with my coach, and then we agreed, all right, we're gonna go back into prep after, taking that time to kind of just maintain. And that was around April. So that was around April, and my coach agreed that like let's drop the show date. Let's just keep prepping, getting you closer to getting stage lean, and then we'll make a decision from there as far as like what show you're gonna do. And I really liked that approach. So basically at that point, I believe he had decreased my macros to like 140 carb from the 160, and the cardio went up to around, I want to say 60 minutes for a little while, which again, for me, I don't know if that sounds like like a lot to some people. It wasn't awful, like you get used to it, you know, once you do it for long enough, it's part of your routine, you just get used to it. I will put a disclaimer out there, I've never done cardio 7 days a week in my prep. We always capped it at 6 days a week so I can have at least one full day to just recover, which I think is very smart. I do that with all my own athletes as well, because one thing that you really have to work to manage as you get deeper and deeper into a contest prep is recovery, right? Your body naturally does not recover well when you get stage lean, or like when you are eating less food, when you are doing more cardio, your body does not recover as efficiently as it did when you were not in prep, right? So that's half the battle. When you know, I would say the second half of a prep, that's half the battle. It's just sometimes managing your recovery and making sure that you're not overdoing it, because if you're overdoing it, sometimes your body holds on to too much inflammation and then the weight doesn't drop on the scale and it can be really frustrating, right? So we never have done cardio 7 days a week. I do get the question a lot of what type of cardio I do. So I think those of you guys that have watched me long enough know that I have a Peloton bike. Now I do a lot of my cardio on my Peloton bike. However, I typically would, in this prep, I can confidently say I never did more than 45 minutes in one go round on my Peloton. So anytime my cardio got like higher than 45 minutes, I would maybe do like a 30-minute class on my Peloton, or max 45 minutes, and then I would finish the rest of my cardio and I would do it on the incline treadmill. The reason being is the Peloton bike is a little bit higher impact. It's a little bit more strenuous on the legs. So again, going back to what I just said, like our bodies don't recover as efficiently as we get deeper into contest prep. So that's why towards the end of prep, I really had to cap like my cardio on my Peloton. I didn't usually, like at the end of prep, I didn't do much more than 30 minutes at a time on it, just because it really took a beating on my legs. And so I would do the rest of my cardio either on the Stairmaster or the incline treadmill, because I found that for me specifically, those were a lot lower impact. Now, some competitors, specifically like some of my clients, we will watch at the end of prep, like if they're doing Stairmaster, but they're not recovering effectively, sometimes we'll take out the Stairmaster and we'll do just incline treadmill. It's really all about finding what works best for you and what your body recovers best from, you know, because like for me, my body is really used to my Peloton bike, but it still naturally gets a little inflamed from it. So I did have to watch how much biking I was doing at the end of my prep, because we really had to watch inflammation. So let's kind of jump back to where I was going before I went off on the cardio tangent. So we'll talk about kind of where I was at around May, right? Obviously, I was, you know, my body was responding. I was still feeling pretty darn good. You know, I wasn't feeling overly like fatigued yet. I would not say I started to really feel like I was truly in prep until like June. And it's actually funny because I stumbled across a video I took in June, and I did want to put a little clip of it right here. So I'm going to put that video up here. It kind of just shows me raw, real in the moment, having a tough day. So I'm going to put that up here really quickly. All right, I'm filming this right now so I can look back at it and laugh eventually, but not even an Instagram filter can save me right now. I am a mess. I am so tired. I made the mistake of sitting on the couch to finish up some work, and bad idea, because I am so tired, like physically so tired. But I know it'll be worth it, and at least that's what I keep telling myself. So hopefully I'll be able to look back at this and be like, you were so right, it was all worth it. And yeah, but just part of the prep grind. But I'm tired, you guys. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I am tired. All right, so yeah, so that was, I just filmed that. I remember filming it thinking like, I'm gonna wanna look back and watch this. But anyways, around June is when I really started to kind of start to feel those like prep feels, right? And that's also when my cardio had gotten over 60 minutes. So I was, my coach had upped it to 75 minutes. And disclaimer, anytime my cardio got above 60 minutes, I always split it up into 2 sessions, just for my mental sanity. And it was just more efficient for me to do that. And that's what I mean, I'll tell my competitors, if your cardio is over 60 minutes and you want to split it up, please do. Like, it can be really damn hard to sit on a cardio machine for honestly even 60 minutes. So a lot of times what I would do is I would split up my cardio into multiple sessions to make it more tolerable, right? But we had a show in mind in June that we were thinking I could potentially do. It was a Miami show, but then, you know, we realized, okay, could I do it? Yes, but was I gonna be at my best? No. So we decided not to do it, obviously, and then I continued to prep through June. Now, I will say, so like that around that time, I want to say my cardio was 75 minutes. I do believe it had gotten up to 90 minutes at some time, or at some point, and my macros, this is where my macros really started to get to what I would say are like poverty macros. So this is kind of where it gets a little bit more complex. So when I say poverty macros, I'm talking, at first it was like 100 grams of carbs, right? So carbs were basically the main variable we manipulated. And I will say my fats, besides like a few days close to peak week, never got below 40 grams of fat. So that's good. We always like to keep my fat at like 40 or above. And if we had to get below that, it was only for like a few days at a time, because it's very important as a female. If you're eating like below 40 grams of fat long term, it can be pretty detrimental to your hormones, but also digestion too. I tend to notice competitors that have very low fat, they just don't digest things as well. They're not going to the bathroom as frequently. So around that June timeframe is where we really started to push, because we had actually decided on a show by then. And that was my first show, Republic of Texas. So I want to say around like the month of June, like I said, that's really when I started to kind of feel those preppy feels, meaning I was a little run down. Cardio was around, I want to say 75 to 90 minutes daily, and macros were around like 100 grams of carbs. Now granted, when we were doing this, when my protocol got pretty aggressive like this, we would sprinkle in refeed days, meaning higher carb days, to just help me to recover a little bit more. So what it usually looked like would be 5 days of low carbs, right? And then 2 days of refeeds where my carbs would be up a little bit, right? So it wasn't like 7 days a week we were pushing food low. And that's also the approach I take with my competitors, is if, towards the end of prep, there's no way around it. Sometimes you just have to get aggressive, right? But a really good way to keep recovery in a good spot, to keep, the competitor feeling as good as they can, is to implement refeeds. And refeeds oftentimes do help as well with stress management, or just stress like on the body and inflammation, because a lot of times like what would happen is I would take a refeed and I would drop weight the next day. And that to me was always a sign that, okay, your body got more carbs and it let go of a lot of like cortisol or inflammation from those carbs. Therefore, that's why I would hit a new low on the scale the next day. Didn't happen all the time, but sometimes I did hit new lows after a refeed day. So now, we're cruising into that first show, and this is kind of where I'm going to give you guys a disclaimer, like please don't ever follow this protocol, unless you have a coach telling you to do so. But this was specific for me, going into peak week for my first show, and this was only 2 days at a time. So like this is nothing. You can do anything for 2 days, right? Before we went into peak week for my first show, and we depleted, meaning, we really depleted lots of carbs. My coach had my carbs at 70 grams and my fat was at, I want to say 30. And my protein never changed. It was at 135 grams for my entire prep. But those macros, literally hit them for 2 days at the beginning of my peak week, right? I know that sounds really low. Again, disclaimer, this was for me. Don't follow this protocol. And we also did 2 hours of cardio. Now, again, this was very temporary. It wasn't like we were doing this 7 days a week. It was like in little bursts at a time, right? Like in little bursts. And I will say, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I don't mind cardio, but when it gets up to 2 hours, it's not fun at that point. It's just not. But that's part of peak week, is, doing lots of cardio in the beginning, eating very little carbs so you can deplete, and then we fill out throughout the week, and we bring food up and we bring cardio down. That's the approach we take with peak week. So those are kind of like the stats of, I put it out there, that's how aggressive I got, that's the highest my cardio got, lowest my food got. But again, we did things in spurts. It wasn't like I was doing that 7 days a week, and we really paid attention to my biofeedback. There was never a time where I was like so run down where I felt dizzy or lightheaded. Never felt that way. Yeah, did I feel tired? Yes, but it never got to those like crazy extremes like that. All right, so then I competed at my first show, Republic of Texas, and then I had about 3 or 4 weeks in between Republic of Texas and Tampa Pro, and we knew I needed to be a little bit leaner. So basically what we did is for about a week and a half, we brought my calories up. I want to say my carbs came up to like maybe 150 grams for about, I want to say like 10 days after Republic of Texas, and that had me kind of just maintaining my stage weight. But again, we knew I needed to be a little bit leaner for Tampa Pro. So after we brought my carbs up a little bit for about 10 days, got me feeling good again, basically we went back down to those poverty macros, and in order to get my weight down lower for Tampa Pro. So that is kind of how, it's like the whole gist of my prep in a nutshell. But I think it is really important to mention again that when we did get very low with calories and everything, we were doing things like refeeds, or we even did a diet break at one point where there was a week in the middle of like the summer, I want to say it was before Republic of Texas, maybe it was in like June, right? Where we had a week where we brought my calories up just for a whole week, and we did a diet break, and that's a really awesome strategy to implement in prep, especially if you have a longer prep, right? You can't always do that if you have a really short prep, but for lengthier preps, it's a really good option, and it's a really good strategy to implement. Just also, you know, to keep the athlete feeling good. I mean, I know I felt amazing on my diet break week when my carbs are higher and my cardio was lower. That's something else, you know, we would manipulate during my diet break week. But we did have like 1 to 2 diet breaks in my whole prep, or like I guess we'll say in the summer when my prep really got aggressive, we had about 2 diet breaks lasting for about 7 days each. And yeah, so that's kind of my prep in a nutshell. I think I kind of touched on everything I wanted to touch on. I really wanted to talk about my cardio, which I did touch on specifics there. I gave you guys, put it out there, my macros, because I know I always got asked that during prep, and you know how high my cardio got. So again, disclaimer, that's my protocol, and that, you know, it's actually very interesting because when I did my 2021 prep, the lowest I ever had to get in carbs was 100, and so it was a very big difference for me, and I never had to do 2 hours of cardio in my 2021 prep, so it just goes to show every prep is going to be different, right? But we did those extreme protocols in spurts, and like I said, I never felt like dizzy or lightheaded. Of course I felt fatigued, of course I felt tired, but nothing like out of the norm for prep, right? So that's kind of a rundown on my prep. And oh, last thing I'll touch on is training. So my training actually never really changed in the sense of the style of training I was doing. I've always followed a 5-day split. I've, you know, throughout the duration of my prep, I tried my best to maintain my strength, and honestly, I did up until I would say the last month or so of prep, when that, you know, I really did start to, I was really small, my strength was getting a little bit lower. But as far as training goes, and you know, this is what I tell all of my athletes, like, you should not change the way you train just because you're in prep. In fact, you train because you want to maintain as much muscle as possible. So if your training is just kind of like half-assing it, you're probably going to be losing muscle, right? So I kept my training intensity as high as I could with I tried to continue to maintain my strength as long as I could. Every once in a while, like what I'll do with my athletes is, if they're not recovering well towards the end of prep, maybe I'll drop a day of their training and only have them training 4 days a week. That way they can allocate a little bit more time and energy to recovery and cardio as opposed to weight training. But my training never changed in a sense of like the style of training. My training's always been very glute intensive, very shoulder intensive, 5-day split, and like I said, I maintained my strength really well up until about, I would say, a month out from my first show is when it like kind of slowly started to dwindle in some areas, right? But anyways, that's kind of my full prep recap. I know this was a lengthier video, so I am going to kind of wrap it up here. But again, if I haven't said it enough, disclaimer, this was all my protocol. Please do not take this out of context and try to administer it with your own, prep or weight loss journey, and because it doesn't work that way either. You can't just follow somebody else's protocol and expect to get the same results. But I am here today. I'm 3-4 weeks into my reverse diet, doing really well so far, and I intend on keeping you guys updated in future videos with my reverse diet. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it if you enjoyed it, like it, leave a comment below, and I will catch you guys in the next video.